القصة هي قصة الحياة السياسية.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lina Tamim and these are today's headlines. Protesters holding a sit-in near the Environment Ministry in downtown Beirut announce an end to their 2-week-long hunger strike, but say their tents will remain in the area. The European Parliament votes in favor of a new proposal involving the relocation of 120,000 asylum seekers from Italy, Greece and Hungary among EU member states. And the military in Burkina Faso takes to the airwaves to declare it now controls the country just weeks before national elections. Protesters holding a sit-in near the Environment Ministry in downtown Beirut have announced an end to their hunger strike, but said their tents will remain in the area. Speaking at a press conference, hunger striker Wadif Suleiman said they had achieved their objective and held Environment Minister Mohamed Al-Mashnouk accountable through street protests. He added that only one young man will continue in his hunger strike, while the rest will join other activists holding street protests. The young man erected tents and went on hunger strike after protesters from Youth Strength movement stormed the Environment Ministry earlier this month, demanding Al-Mashnouk's resignation over his failure to resolve the waste crisis. The protesters seek to challenge a political class that has dominated Lebanon and undermined its growth since the civil war ended in 1990. Industrialists and businesses have warned that Lebanon's economic stability was in jeopardy due to the ongoing anti-government protests in downtown Beirut, as well as dialogue meetings and successive sessions to elect a president. During a conference at the Chamber of Commerce in Beirut, head of the Beirut Traders Association, Nicolas Chamaz, said, quote, "As much as the demands of the civil society action are gaining legitimacy, this mode of action is putting economic stability at risk, and the protesters must clear the streets." Chamaz called on civil society campaigners instead to hold rallies less frequently. He also suggested that national dialogue sessions be moved from Parliament in downtown Beirut to a different venue. Similar calls for protesters to leave downtown Beirut were echoed by Mohamed Sh'ir, president of the Beirut Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. He said he was with a civilized protest that protects state property and the livelihoods of people and does not threaten the remainder of our economy. Many of Lebanon's 800 drinking water suppliers were given a 6-week ultimatum to either meet the state's health and safety requirements or face closure. Health Minister Wael Abu Faour said a previous survey showed more than 800 water stations and companies were selling drinking water to citizens. Speaking during a joint news conference with Industry Minister Hussein Haj Hassan, Abu Faour said the majority of the tests performed on them indicate non-compliance with health standards and cause health damage to a lot of citizens. He said the Ministries of Industry and Health have given the violators until October 31st for correcting violations. For his part, Haj Hassan said his ministry was conducting routine inspections, urging the water suppliers to settle their legal statuses for the sake of the people. The Military Court of Cassation has postponed former Minister Michel Smeha's retrial to October the 22nd. The decision came after Smeha's defense attorney asked for more time to look into the content of the recordings between Smeha and Milad Kfouri, an undercover police agent. Smeha was arrested in August 2012 by the Internal Security Forces Information Branch and later confessed to plotting bomb attacks to target political and religious officials in North Lebanon. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison by the military court earlier this year, but a judge ordered a retrial after protests by Smeha's opponents who complained that his sentence was too lenient. Moving on to Syria, warplanes have mounted around a dozen airstrikes on the ISIS-held city of Raqqa in an unusually heavy attack by government forces on an area also being targeted by a US-led coalition. Activist groups said on Twitter that Raqqa was being slaughtered silently as regime jets mounted more than 12 raids on the city and listed 8 targets. Elsewhere in the country, 3 children were among at least 11 civilians killed when a Syrian government aircraft dropped a barrel bomb on a rebel-held neighborhood of Aleppo. The air raid came a day after rebel mortar fire on government-held areas of the northern city killed 38 people, including at least 18 children, drawing UN condemnation. A Syrian military source told Reuters that the Syrian military has recently started using new types of air and ground weapons supplied by Russia, underlining growing Russian support to Damascus that is alarming the United States. The source described the weapons as highly accurate and effective. The United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, has arrived in Damascus to meet with Syrian officials. He was greeted at the Sheraton Hotel in Damascus. Following his arrival in the capital, de Mistura headed for meetings at the Foreign Ministry, where he was received by Syrian Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Mikdad. Earlier in September, Mikdad had told a news conference that any UN envoy should be neutral and not biased when proposing initiatives. De Mistura urged for a political solution to the Syrian conflict on Monday after meeting with Arab League Secretary General Nabil al-Arabi in Cairo. The Syrian conflict has killed 250,000 people since 2011 and has forced half of the Syrian population away from their homes, creating 4 million refugees and displacing some 7.6 million more within the country. And coming up next, Thailand declares Pattaya a disaster zone after it was hit by overnight floods. More details next. Welcome back. Emergency officials in Saudi Arabia say more than 1,000 pilgrims were safely evacuated from a hotel in Mecca during a fire there ahead of the Hajj. Authorities say a blaze started on the 8th floor of an 11-story hotel in Mecca's Aziziyah neighborhood. Saudi civil defense officials say 2 pilgrims were being treated for injuries from the fire. At least 10 people have been killed and at least 55 were wounded in bombings which rocked the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Police say today's twin attacks were carried out by bombers on foot, wearing explosives-laden vests. One bomber struck in Baghdad's Bayb al-Sharjah area, while the other struck at Al-Watba Square. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant Group claimed responsibility for the attacks. In a statement posted online, ISIL said 2 fighters had targeted police and Shia militia fighters. The European Parliament has voted in favor of a new EU Commission mechanism proposal involving the relocation of 120,000 asylum seekers from Italy, Greece and Hungary among EU member states. 370 members voted in favor and 134 against. The proposal was supported by the European Union's legislative body with a large majority. The Parliament's decision remains symbolic, with the European Council still having to discuss the proposal at the Extraordinary Justice and Home Affairs Council on September 22nd. No agreement on relocation was reached during the last Justice and Home Affairs Council on September 14th. Attending a debate on the proposition ahead of the vote, European Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans thanked the Parliament for organizing a vote on the Commission proposal and called for action.
We are advocating staying in touch with our souls and not saying to people who flee from war and persecution, you should stay away from Europe's shores. We need to act now, and I do bow before this Parliament for taking the political responsibility to vote today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The UNHCR say there are currently 59 million displaced people in the world. And clearly, voting for this resolution today, for this legislation today, sends a message that actually Europe is prepared to accept limitless numbers of people. That actually is politically and physically impossible. And wouldn't it be better and more intelligent for us to think about what the 1951 Geneva Convention and definition of a genuine refugee is?
Moving on to West Africa, the military in Burkina Faso has taken to the airwaves to declare it now controls the country, confirming that a coup has just taken place just weeks before national elections. In the announcement aired early this morning on national television and radio, the statement said the transitional government in the West African country had been dissolved. The statement came a day after members of the elite Presidential Guard unit of the military arrested the transitional president and prime minister. The communiqué read by Lieutenant Colonel Mamadou Bamba criticized the electoral code. which blocked members of the ex-president's party from taking part in the October 11th elections. Bamba announced the beginning of a coherent, fair and equitable process that would lead to inclusive elections. And now for some more catastrophes around the world. A magnitude 8.3 earthquake has struck off the coast of Chile, killing at least 5 people and forcing 1 million to flee their homes. The quake shook buildings late on Wednesday in the capital city, Santiago, about 280 kilometers to the south, and flooded some coastal areas under a tsunami warning. President Michelle Bachelet said she planned to travel to the areas worst affected by the quake, the biggest to hit the world's top copper producer since 2010. Television images showed panicked people gathered in streets lined with damaged buildings, while big waves flooded roads in some cities along the coast. The quake also damaged homes, buildings, and injured several people, and was felt as far away as Buenos Aires in Argentina. Frequent aftershocks continue to shake the country. And in Asia, Thailand has declared Pattaya in Chonburi province a disaster zone after it was hit by overnight floods. The flooding is due to tropical storm Vamco, which has hit various areas in Thailand, causing heavy downpours and rising sea levels. Thai media say 4 other southeastern provinces, including Tak, Chanthaburi, Surin and Sri Sakit, were also considered disaster zones. Pattaya, a popular beach town, appears to have been the hardest hit. Although water has receded in many places, some of the lower areas in Pattaya were still flooded midday. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton appeared on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon and joked with Fallon about Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump's attitude towards women. In a skit between the host mocking Trump and his guest, Fallon asked Clinton about her approach to women and also responded to Clinton's question about Trump's stance on women's issues, saying that he knows a lot of women and they all have issues. Check it out.
Please give a warm welcome to Hillary Clinton, ladies and gentlemen.
She on that Alexander Wayne. Gold presidential Venus when I play the game.
He recently said, quote, Mr. Trump insults and dismisses women. But tell me, what would you do to help women in this country?
You know, Donald, I've spent my entire career fighting for women's rights. I'll push for equal pay in the workplace, for protecting women's health and reproductive rights, making quality, affordable child care a reality for families. That's what I believe in. That's what I'm fighting for. You know, I'm really curious, Donald. What is your stance on women's issues?
Look, I know a lot of women, and they all have issues.
Is Trump going to make it? Is he going to last the whole way? How long do you think he will last? I mean, do you feel like he was going to go, or are you just maybe waiting back like rope-a-dope style until he just gets tired, and then he's tired and you go, all right, out of the way, buddy. Yeah.
Well, look, I think that he's going to go as long as he wants to go.
Yeah.
And more power to him. I mean, that is one of the great things about this country.
Sure, yeah.
You think if you're over 35 and you're eligible as an American citizen, you can actually run for president. And so he's making the most out of it. I'm having a good time watching it. I find it...
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Protesters holding a sit-in near the Environment Ministry in downtown Beirut announced an end to their 2-week hunger strike and say their tents will remain in the area. The European Parliament votes in favor of a new proposal involving the relocation of 120,000 asylum seekers from Italy, Greece and Hungary among EU member states. And the military in Burkina Faso takes to the airwaves to declare it now controls the country just weeks before the national elections. Those are your top stories for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and I thank you all for tuning in this afternoon. Take care.
القصة هي قصة الحياة السياسية.